Hello and welcome to ATD and the D Today podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Maier, currently the chapter president for ATD Detroit.
And I'm your host, Clifton Clarke, currently the chapter president-elect. This is a podcast all about training, learning, and development here in Metro Detroit. ATD and the D Today is produced by the Detroit chapter of the Association for Talent Development. We're a professional organization for people who are dedicated to improving their skills and career prospects within the learning and development world. You can learn more about us at detroitatd.org. You can also learn more about the ATD National Organization and all the industry insights they offer at td.org. We'll be here each month hosting a conversation with some learning and development professionals. We're going to pick a topic in our field and share some news about what's going on with ATD Detroit. We hope you'll hang out with us and share it with your friends.
Welcome to today's episode of ATD and the D Today. We are so excited to have our guest, Esther Jackson, talk to us about adaptability and unexpected change.
Hello.
Thanks. Hey, Esther. So do you mind if we just dive right in?
Please do.
I'm eager to get started. Okay, so change is often unexpected. It hits fast and hard, and the pace of change seems to be accelerating. We've experienced Y2K, cell phones, social media, COVID, DEI, and AI, all within the last 25 years. It feels like we don't have time to settle in anymore.
I got tired, Clifton, just listening to the list that you ran down.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. It's a lot.
I agree too. Oh my God.
I'm overwhelmed from that list right there. So we were built for this. We were built for this.
Okay.
With all of that said, what would you say is what would you say to people who feel like they can't adapt with all these big changes?
Honestly, it really takes me back to over 10 years ago in my early years of doing facilitation and instructional design, just coming into the industry and really starting with one of my initial courses, which was stress management.
Okay.
And so often we encounter things that we feel are outside of our control, overwhelming to us. Mm-hmm. And when you look at eustress, which is EUSTRESS, the good stress, versus distress, which is the bad stress, it's a matter of how are you able to manage, if you are able to manage those things that you feel are out of your control, if you're able to manage your stress. The good stress, the things you welcome that you feel are manageable and you're able to cope with them, is going to go in the direction of the eustress, versus when it's overwhelming for you, that goes in the direction of the distress, which can impact us mentally and physically and physiologically in a negative way. And so taking that to the change and the things that are being placed on us and demanded of us in terms of our energy physically, in terms of us dealing and coping with the changes that we see coming, as well as changes we did not anticipate. It's really a matter of our perception and how we respond to those changes. And that's where adaptability comes in. So that's another reason why I'm really excited about it. Yeah. Because oftentimes initially when I'm experiencing that myself, because just because I'm talking about adaptability, Sarah and Clifton, doesn't mean I got it down.
Of course.
Honestly, it's a matter of how can I look at this differently? And how can I discern between what's within my control and what's not within my control? And then taking steps to respond to it and looking for the opportunity where I can be better as a result of it. Because whatever comes at me, I have to remind myself I was built for it, and it is not something that I'm going to allow to take me down.
That reminds me of that ATD meeting we went to a couple months back. Do you remember that, Esther, when we were both on the same side of the room? I can't remember what the question was, but we were both on the same side of the room and we both felt like we had met that bucket, and someone else said, I didn't feel like I was quite there. And we were both like, but that's not the point, is being at arrival. It's that you're working towards arrival. That's why we both felt like we fit in whatever category it was at the time.
Was that the one for DISC?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't take me off scope. Bring me back. I love this.
I know.
Me too.
About it all
I
day.
just remember thinking, like, being a little bit surprised that people thought they had to, at the moment, to be adaptable means you are adaptable in every single situation. I don't think that's quite true. I think it's, an ever-changing goalpost you're trying to hit.
Absolutely. And Sarah, you hit a major point and factor there, because as human beings coming into the world, we're responding to things all the time.
Oh, yeah.
The changes that take place within our bodies as we grow, as we develop, as well as how we respond to others, as well as how we're responding to the environment and what we're doing to constantly evolve and grow. And so something for us to really consider is, when people come into our lives, when people leave our lives, when we experience some certain things, what is it that I'm doing to reflect and see how I have grown? What is it that I'm doing to recognize what my lessons learned are, so that there's something that's going to make me better as a result of that person I met, as a result of what I experienced, as a result of something that happened to me, even whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job that worked out well and prepared me for a promotional opportunity, whether it's a job that I lost that did not work out and I was separated, whether it's a relationship that didn't work, whether it's the loss of a loved one and I just have their memories left. All of those things, painful, exciting, fulfilling. How do we recognize the lessons learned to take us to the next level?
I think that's why this topic is so important. Everyone is going to have to be adaptable at some point.
Yeah, those are great points and great pieces of advice to give to people every day in work. I know myself, I've experienced some change in the last 5 or 6 months with a lot of things. And so I have really had to grab on to my adaptability skills to try to just stay afloat.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, those are great points, Esther, on what we can do as individuals. As you know, I love talking about leaders. I love talking about leaders. And so let's shift to leaders. What can leaders do to prepare their people for change that hasn't happened yet? So hasn't happened. What can leaders do to prepare their employees for change?
So, if you don't mind, Clifton, I need to follow that question with a question, because my answer makes a difference depending on whether we're talking about leaders knowing what the change is that's coming, or are we saying change in general? They don't know what the change is. They just want to prepare their direct reports. So,
Change in general.
Change in general. Okay.
Yeah, because there's a specific thing when you know it's coming. It's usually followed up with instructions, and there's an organizational plan, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, we wanna go to change in general that maybe you haven't seen yet. How can you keep your employees ready? Because that's a big headache when change happens and you as a leader are trying to adapt to it, but then you got 7, 8, 9 people on your team and you need to manage all of them. Is there anything that a leader could do to prepare their team so that they're not so rattled?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For one, you hit the nail on the head. One is modeling that behavior where your direct reports, they recognize and they can reflect, as well as refer back to instances where there's something that caught you off guard, and they've seen how you responded, and they've seen how you've been able to be a balanced person as their leader, and how you respond to changes that no one saw coming, and being able to handle yourself under pressure. It's typically an emotional response. Another, so that's modeling. Another would be being a leader who's empathetic, recognizing, hey, we're not talking about robots, we're not talking about chatbots, we're not talking about human machines who are able to just adapt and get with it. Change happens and you just respond accordingly. We're talking about human beings who function outside of artificial intelligence. So how can you approach and understand them as human beings who have things going on in their personal lives, who have situations that they have to deal with when they leave the job, who have real challenges and demands placed on them, and then you bring the work situation. Yes, they're being paid to do a job. At the same token, how can we recognize that this person being paid to do a job has responsibilities, has folks they're caring for, has other things that pull on them in addition to the responsibilities of the role for this organization that's driving business outcomes? So how do we recognize and show that empathy from the human aspect? So we said modeling, we said the empathy. 3, I would definitely say, is what kind of culture are you setting within your team? People have a culture, of course. There's a culture in the organization. Sometimes we overlook that leader sets a culture that may not, or it may be the same as that organizational culture. What kind of culture do you set within your team? Do people feel like they can take a chance, take a risk? Are people feeling like they can be innovative and creative? And when a problem comes up, let me pose an idea, and I don't have a fear of retribution or my leader.
Do they feel comfortable?
What were you thinking? Why would you say something like that?
Yeah,
What
I feel that.
job are you, or something like that? So something to think about. What kind of adaptable culture do you set within your team? And then lastly, I would say, what resources do you have available in addition to having that open door, in addition to being someone that they can respond to as a human being? So those are just 4 that I would say right off that a leader can do. And number 5, to close it off, I would certainly say encouraging with feedback. How are you providing the feedback that helps people to recognize what those adaptability skills are? We use adaptability in terms of a reference to, it's actually going to be a whole category of skills. You mentioned adaptability skills, Clifton, and specifically we're talking about skills such as being a critical thinker, being a problem solver, being someone who can handle pressure or demanding situations, being one who's collaborative, being one who's curious, not just about people, but curious and wanting to know about other topics, as well as being one who can be strategic. And so those are just a few specific skills that we have grouped under that umbrella of adaptability. And when we have a leader who's able to help cultivate those types of things and their direct reports, that's a leader that's helping to set them up to be effective, as well as one who can respond with a high level of adaptability skills.
It sounds like these leaders need to be adaptable themselves. So they have to be creative, find innovative solutions. How do you recommend that they do that?
1, I certainly say start with doing some self-reflection.
I love that.
Having some self-awareness. And anytime I hear or read or think in terms of self-awareness, I go immediately to emotional intelligence.
Yes, I was thinking that too.
So goes hand in hand with adaptability, emotional intelligence, which is also why in many emotional intelligence models, such as the popular Daniel Goleman's EQ model, one of those quadrants in Daniel Goleman's model would be that self-control model, that self-control quadrant of the model, which is where we find adaptability, because that's the ability to be able to not only manage your emotions, but have that self-control and response to things that are happening.
So as you were talking about that, I thought about the feedback piece you were talking about a minute ago, and just thinking, when people hear feedback, I want to just be really clear. It's both good and bad feedback, right? It's positive and negative. We want to make sure we're giving people that good feedback of like, hey, you're doing this well, and not missing that step.
For sure. And I really don't like to say bad feedback.
Yeah, I know. As soon as I said, I was like, I regret it.
I really like to think in terms of positive feedback,
yes,
and then the constructive feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the courses, or in my early days of training and instructional design, in addition to stress management, one of the courses I used to teach was a basic coaching skills course for leaders. And we had 8 modules in that particular course. We had a whole module, Sarah, dedicated to feedback.
Love
and
that.
the different types of feedback.
It's a skill.
It absolutely is. And one thing I recall is how one discussion I had with my participants was about consider the source. How often do we hear consider the source of that feedback?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care to put so much value in the source, because sometimes we allow the source to create that facade, or to cause us to build a wall where we block out the benefits from that feedback. So even if someone may not have the best intentions behind feedback they're sharing with me, this is my point. I'm still looking to see, is there something Esther can glean from that feedback, whether they meant it for my good or not? Is there something that can help me grow?
This was reminding me of why I brought this up. Why I brought this up in the first place. I was thinking about my own experiences and how I recently brought up some feedback to a leader, and I remember feeling really nervous about it, and I was like uncomfortable, and just thinking maybe from her perspective of how she took that, and like I just wonder, not only considering where it's coming from, but also how often you get it could be another thing that would be helpful for people. Like, okay, if you aren't getting feedback like this often, like maybe listen to it, maybe see where it's coming from.
And practicing steps like that would be a matter of, when I change my environment or I have a different leader, how am I exercising adaptability? So that I can be flexible, I can adjust myself, be willing to make change so that it works out for my betterment in this new situation, and not be one who is not agile.
Yes.
So valid points that you bring up. There's one organization called AQAI, and it's actually an organization that's based outside the country. I completed my adaptability certification with them. Mm-hmm. They have a wonderful AQ model.
Okay.
And within that model, it talks about one additional key skill, which is one's ability to be agile, mm-hmm. and be able to adjust, as well as in essence, when it talks about being agile and that skill of agility, it's talking about, are you able to recognize situations where you need to unlearn some things, so that you can make room for new things? AI, hello.
Yes. And we all are.
I know it's hard, and that's at the organizational level as well for some. And I can respect, the data security issues as we get to higher levels within advanced technology. Still, the world around us is adapting and taking on artificial intelligence in more ways that really are impacting our quality of life, impact how we structure things professionally as well as personally. So this particular model by the AQAI company, I really loved it, really loved the experience going through their program to complete my certification, because it helped me to recognize some things I had to unlearn personally.
And all of us are always going to have to be adaptable.
Yeah, we don't recognize all the time, wow, I do have a habit of continuing with that and have a hard time adjusting. And we think oftentimes we are gurus when it comes to being flexible and adaptable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I love that about AQAI, and I'm just wondering, as you spoke earlier about culture, the role of culture in dealing with adaptability, and some of the things that is required of us to accept change. And so, particularly, we have talked a lot lately. Of course, I'm obsessed with AI. um, how do we move forward with AI, automation, and efficiency without sacrificing humanity? Like, how do we protect culture and morale without,
Ooh.
while also pursuing our personal growth? Because the need to unlearn some things and all of that is coming into play when we're using AI. I mean, I have to wean myself. I think I'm going to start a support group for it because I have to wean myself off of it. It's too good. It's too good. It gives you all the answers. And so how do we, through organizational culture, how do we move forward while keeping the humanity with AI? Because we got to deal with it.
Good stuff, Clifton. Good stuff. I won't say a number one, do this first.
Yeah.
You don't have a complete answer checklist on what's going to fit everyone because the answer will vary depending on that organization's culture. What I will say is, in general, when it comes to how we embrace AI, so true what we may hear in many instances about what, or first off, taking a look at where your organization stands when it comes to technology. One of the topics in there is a managing learning program certificate that I teach for ATD, the Association for Talent Development. And so one of the topics we cover in that, which is a program for those who are learning leaders, they manage a team who's responsible for the learning function. One topic is change management. And when we're covering change management in that particular module, we're talking about what steps you need to take to recognize the change readiness of your organization or the team where the change is being implemented. And if we're talking about implementing a new technology, a new learning management system, what's the appetite? What happened last time when something was implemented technology wise? So certainly something to consider, the readiness for implementation and welcoming it. Something else to consider would be, how are you able to maintain security and establish some kind of protocol or policy for the usage of the AI?
Yeah.
Definitely standards need to be put in place because as awesome as AI is and as helpful as it has accessibility that's been extended across the world. And so depending on if you're talking about certain platforms where it's licensed, where it's limited to just internal information access and all, that's going to vary. But you want to have some kind of standard policy that's put in place so it kind of guides how people engage and interact with it and leverage it. And something else to consider would certainly be, what's going to help us to be more effective and efficient with the use of AI concerning routine tasks so that we can reallocate or focus our attention on those things that allow us to add more of the human factor, to your point. So how can I look at the routine tasks, the problem solving that's not so human focused, that I can leave it to AI to do, while we put our focus on other things that involve the necessary human touch, that human thought process.
That's so important because the one thing that I really don't like is that it are those organizations that are leaning into it, and then they have a false expectation of us who also use it. So yes, it still takes me, X number of hours to do this. I know you think I could just zip it in AI,
but I have all these other things. I got to check this stuff, right? I got to make sure it fits into flow. And at least the conversations that I'm having, organizations are not understanding that. And now they're heaping unrealistic expectations on their employees to produce faster just because this is an automated engine. So I appreciate what you said. It's very important that people hear how they need to work their culture around this AI. To remember us humans here, because you know what employees think. Employees think
Mm-hmm.
you're going to use this to get rid of me, and with those aggressive actions, it seems like that.
Well, it helps when we can. You may not be able to have a finite list, but give your workforce some idea of what types of tasks
Yeah.
it's appropriate and it's expected that you would leverage AI for versus this is what we want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so having the distinguished list may have you, or even having something that employees can reference so they understand when to leverage AI and some factors behind that, because you called it out, Clifton, when you stated, hey, AI will give us some results. It will give us maybe some responses to prompts that we enter.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the wrong prompt, maybe the right prompt, but it doesn't mean we take everything AI gives us as is. So definitely need to do some massaging. I may ask AI, tell me how to ask this question if I need to complete a survey that is going to be XYZ. Or what are some questions that I might want to ask to include in this survey? What might be other ways to state this particular passage, and I have the draft of the passage in a way where I have a professional, courteous, and concise approach or tone, or so I try to be specific, and then I try to be mindful of, hey, Esther, AI can't follow up.
Right.
I always like to think of AI as like a little intern. Like, we like you, we think you're great, but like we need to check everything you do.
Yes. And I have to admit, I am going through AI training, which I love. Yeah. But I'll also tell you, I am loving the results I get from AI.
Oh, yeah.
I love the results I get. The prompts, I work on my prompts and I'm like, wow. Sometimes I feel like you actually understood everything I was asking of you with that.
I was just gonna say, all of this that we're saying, I'm like making fun of AI like a little baby intern that needs to be babysat. But 6 months from now, December 2025, maybe it's not an intern anymore. Maybe it's, the lower level above intern, whatever that is. So
but it's still, to me, as much as I love it, it's still to me the equivalent of an open book test.
Oh yeah, I definitely think
just because the test is open book, it still needs to take me the amount of time to complete the test.
Yeah.
I used to have friends who would say, hey, it was open book. What are you still doing sitting there? Come on, let's get out of here. It's like, no, I gotta check, make sure. So
yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then we want to consider as well, there's so many different ways to leverage it. One is leveraging AI for generating a list, generating sources for this, generating some options for a rewrite. Can I get clarification? Can I get revisions for this draft?
Yeah.
What are some ways that I would introduce this particular presentation? And we keep evolving with how we can use AI, to the point now we can use AI to create a whole course. And we just go back and refine it. We've already told it what the topic is. I need a course that is going to be a 30-minute session for leaders to introduce them to the importance of empathy and leadership.
Yeah.
I will knock it out within less than a minute. And then it's a matter of me going back and refining it to ensure it's conducive to my organizational culture. It's appropriate for my audience. It aligns with maybe our business outcomes and what we're targeting for end results with the skills that we're trying to build or what it is we're solving for.
Exactly. That's what we want people to understand. They think that the work stops when we enter that prompt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
AI just knocked out a few things off the checklist, but we still have additional work to do. And I love the direction that it's going in, honestly.
Yeah, I think it has a lot of benefits for culture.
For sure.
You know,
The thing, though, the catch is caveat. We have organizations that need to catch up
yeah, resistant.
because it's going at such a quick pace.
Yes.
There's no telling where we'll be in 2 years. And then if your organization is not caught up right now,
Yes.
That adaptability, that is also going to be a critical factor there. So we're talking about things just like what you all mentioned. How is it that maybe I'm looking to enhance my skills so that I'm ready and I'm actually kind of future forecasting and looking at the direction things are going in? We see things are evolving. We don't know where it's going to be, but what are we doing to prepare ourselves?
Very quickly. Very, very quickly. I tell this story all the time, and I will forever to the end of my days. Last February, I saw a speaker from Corewell Health, wonderful speaker. She spoke on AI and HR. 6 months later, I went to another conference and she was doing the same one. I almost didn't sit in, but I sat in, and it was a completely different speech.
Of course it was, yeah.
6 months later, it was a completely different speech. She talked about completely different things that it could do in HR just 6 months apart. And I made sure I raised my hand and told everyone that. And they were really intrigued by that. And she said, yeah, I do remember that. And she explained that. And her phrase was, change is changing.
Yes.
It's faster. Yeah. Yeah.
It is.
I even highly encourage people to, if you are not one who's an avid user right now with artificial intelligence, maybe just push yourself to take some baby steps.
Yes.
Use AI to generate a checklist. Prompt AI with a basic checklist you need. Or you need some ideas concerning a training that you're looking to develop. Or let's say someone has requested training from you and you're not sure if a needs assessment was done. Ask AI, what might be some examples of needs assessment questions if I have a client who blah, blah, blah. And so taking some of those basics and leveraging AI and then taking it to the next level with your human aspect, your human expertise, your cognitive
missing information they don't have.
I mean, come on, because there's some things, hey, AI can only tell us so much. Yeah. But going back to what Clifton mentioned, there's nothing that's really right now, it's going in that direction, but we still want to have that relationship building potential. The consultant hat that you put on when you're working with a client and you're addressing their needs and you're responding by trying to understand what the situation is behind the request for training.
Yep. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So as you were talking about this, I'm thinking my husband's on the job market right now. He's looking for work. And as he's looking for work, this is something I consider a lot too. I'm in a very AI forward job. And I think if something were to happen to Medicaid or whatever, and I perhaps get laid off, I would want to be at a company that also cares about AI. And as my husband's on the market, I'm like, how do you find these jobs that are what you want? And do you leave if it's not what you want? Where do we go? And I'm sure that there's going to be movement in the industry in that regard, and also with layoffs that we're hearing of. So with all of these changes, what can we do to improve the culture at work when people are leaving, either voluntarily or involuntarily?
One thought I have is initially taking a look at what's the organization's value proposition. What's your value proposition as an individual in your particular role? What is the vision and mission for the organization? How does, and these are a number of questions.
Yeah, these are great.
How does AI fit into the bottom line for the business in terms of their vision, their mission, their reason for existence? And so with those questions, I'd want to take steps to understand what are some things that maybe we should be considering based on where technology is going and what our business is about, that is going to prepare us for what lies 2 years ahead, what lies 3 years ahead. So we're talking about that future forecasting in terms of future readiness, not just, what's the workforce going to look like in terms of size, but what is it we're anticipating as the business is changing, technology changes is going to impact our business. How can we tap into that to look at ways to be innovative, creative? AI can help me be innovative and creative. If, I work with some prompts, maybe, and this is something that I've done, working with folks in my network, asking some questions to understand if they have a similar problem that I'm having, and then taking that back to AI to massage it into what might be some ideas for what my organization can do, given the state of this particular problem, given that our focus is this. And so sometimes AI can be that thought partner for us. One way to use it. Another thing to help us in terms of the example you mentioned with folks are leaving, not seeing stability and all, as we look at being future ready, what are current pain points and where maybe we are failing to adapt in some instances? It's not a matter of we're not tapping AI enough, but we just fail to be that change, that high adaptable culture that we could be.
That is such a valuable piece, because not only do we want AI, but we want, the good culture that comes with an organization.
For sure. There's an author, when I was working on my dissertation, there's an author that I really appreciated that I read. The title was The Adversity Quotient at Work, and it was Paul Stoltz. And something that I started using in my presentations from what he had in the book, Paul talked about quitters, campers, and climbers. The quitters are the folks who
I know immediately what you're talking about.
I'm done. I've had it. I'm done. I can't even say I'm doing enough just to get by. The quitters are just done.
These are the people who are like, no, I'm not doing AI.
Yes. Whether it's AI, whether it's trying to be an overachiever, trying
not
to
doing any of it.
Average. I'm just
here.
Checked out. Okay. Whether you want to call it silent quitting, all of those wonderful fancy names we're hearing now. Then you have the campers. The campers doing just enough to get by. Nah, I don't need to take a new class. Oh, I think I know enough. Well, I'm doing okay. I still have a job. I might be a borderline needs improvement, or borderline meeting expectations, or hey, I just have a few years to go. Let me just ride this out. Those are your campers. Then you have the climbers. Those are the ones always looking to take it to a next level. Those are the ones who are curious, who are the ever learners, who are the ones that appreciate diversity, the ones who are tapping into opportunities, being innovative, taking it to the next level, learning what's new, and able to let go of things that they need to unlearn. And so the goal would be, what steps can you take to promote a culture where you have folks who are more so in that climbing, that climber realm, versus the folks who are campers or those who are gradually moving down into the quitters territory?
Can you turn quitters and campers into climbers?
I say you can.
Yeah.
I say you can. And and that's a wonderful question, Clifton. There are variables that come into play. One would be going back to what we talked about with leaders promoting a certain culture.
Yeah.
What kind of relationship is the leader
Are you
building to
cultivating growth?
understand what motivates that particular direct report or that employee? Have you tried to connect with me?
Yeah.
Have you asked me what's going on in my life, what I want to do career-wise in the organization?
Mhm.
I would say 99% of the time I'm a climber, but every once in a while when you get like in a situation, it's like, oh, I guess I'm a camper now too. I think it's
And
important to
what
realize that like if you're not being cultivated, it could go either way.
and so that goes to say, definitely, Sarah, if you reflect back, what are some of those variables that impacted you moving from being a climber to moving into that camper realm?
When leaders aren't curious, because like I said earlier, I'm not one who often gives feedback. For the most part, I'm happy, I'm great. But if I do give a piece of feedback and they're not curious and instead there's reprimands or like some kind of negative experience for me, it's like, oh, maybe I'll just be a camper. Maybe I'll just scooch on by because being a climber is no longer good for me.
Or if
Or
I think I'm climbing,
I
but
think I'm
every
climbing,
time
but
I
it's
think
not
I'm
working.
climbing, the feedback is like I'm a camper.
Like you
or
climbed
I'm
too
doing
far.
it wrong. Right. And so certainly goes into understanding. One thing I love, and there are a few authors that are like my go-tos.
Mm-hmm.
And one is John
We'll
Maxwell.
link them all. John Maxwell. Okay.
John Maxwell, No Limits. And it's something John Maxwell mentions in No Limits is a story about a friend. And it's very short. He mentioned that this friend, he was telling his friend that, he just wants to stop something that he was doing. And he just said something that was so powerful. He said his friend told him, John, you can't stop. You can't stop improving.
Mm-hmm.
You're not that good yet. And if we had leaders that recognize, can I continue to work to not only build myself, but the relationship I have with the folks on my team and instill that in them? Could you imagine how powerful our teams could be if we had leaders that saw that or thought that way for themselves as well as for their direct reports? Not that it's not good enough, but we're always taking it to the point of recognizing how the person has contributed, appreciating that, as well as instilling in them, based on that, I see that you have the potential and the capability to take it to another level. And I want you to see how I'm modeling as well, because I'm doing it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, putting a pin in that and talking about the type of people that we have, how do you think everyone's going to respond to all the changes in DEI? I mean, what's happening now? Is it non-existent? I know that when we talked a while ago, I had just got done talking to some companies who were looking for a way to still do DEI but disguise it and not call it DEI. Do you still see that happening now with companies? How should we feel about DEI? What should we be doing? I don't know. I don't know. Hands up. I don't
I feel
know.
like we need a slight caveat that some people don't have a say in that. Some people are forced to make choices on DEI based on, where they work or whatever. I guess like government entities.
Yeah, I mean,
But
it's private. It's private entities too, because
yeah, it is all
even
over.
even the private entities have shareholders, have CEOs who who have a belief system in what was done, and so they want their businesses to be governed that way. It's not just. So I'm glad you said that. It's not just government. It's private businesses too. Like,
Yeah, it's
what do we
everywhere.
do? What do we do? How should we feel about
Tell
it?
us, Esther. What do we do?
How should we feel about it? I mean,
How much time do we have? We need to start our
Not enough.
So, want to make sure everyone is aware when we say DEI, we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you.
Some
We're
may
gonna
even
commercial design.
say DEIB or
Right.
D&I, diversity
Yeah.
and inclusion. The DEIB would be diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so many acronyms, so many. There's nothing new with DEI. DEI has been around for some time, maybe referenced with other titles, other labels, and DEI will continue to be around, whether, regardless
Well,
of
and why is
whether
that though? Like,
the
it's because
government
DEI is,
it's about people.
yeah.
It's not about differences alone. It's about how we connect and recognize our similarities and our differences, and we leverage that for more successful relationships, better engagement, problem solving, just success all around in terms of what we set out to do and being successful with those accomplishments and whatever it is, whether it's connecting, people belonging, getting the bottom line results for the organization. So when we break it down in terms of diversity being about how we vary, whether it's our appearance, our gender identity, whether it's our job roles, our level of education, our social economic status, our marital status, all of that. We could go down the list.
Oh,
our
yeah.
weight, all our age, all of it. And then when we get to equity, we're talking about what steps are taken so that people don't have equal, but they have access based on whatever their status is.
Yeah.
Things are accessible to them, or they have opportunities. And when certain additional resources need to be provided in order for someone to be able to access something at the same level as someone else, again, that's speaking to equity. And then inclusion, not just inviting me to the dance, as some have said, but also asking me to dance, maybe even playing my music, that's my preference, But when we talk about inclusion, we're talking about people being made to feel that not only are they respected and accepted, but also that we recognize your ability to contribute and add to. And so those are distinguished areas when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And those are things that can't go away. The minute we say DEI is dead, we're saying we're not going on as a people. We're not going on as human beings who have to engage or interact with one another.
Yes.
So there's no such thing. No such thing. So you can say DEI is dead all you want, but there's going to be another name for it, or you're going to have to do something in order to achieve success and outcomes, regardless what you call it.
I think that's the real point there, that in order to achieve success, right? Because we can pretend like we don't need it, but we're going to fail without it.
Yeah, it is. I'm just.
Oh, do you disagree, Esther?
No, I agree. It's just there's so much that's involved with it, because I feel like we try to place a narrow focus on DEI and just relegate it to DEI is just about ensuring that we don't discriminate. There's no harassment. We don't
I think that's when it's done incorrectly.
And
that's just the baseline.
It's so much broader. It's about how are we really making it work to our advantage when we have 4 and 5 generations in the workplace at once. Yes. How are we able to see the relationships that are able to move forward? How are we able to allow for diverse thinking styles, diverse level of skills and capabilities to be in a collaborative way, to be things that are prominent when it comes to how we work together as a team so that we can be better creatively, better in terms of innovation, in terms of problem solving. All of that is DEI.
Yeah.
How are we going to the different areas where we find potential candidate pools from people that maybe we're accustomed to just going to this one entity, to this one organization, to this one maybe center, or this one school or this one university to seek out potential graduates. Why haven't we tried these other options in terms of potential candidates for job roles? Why haven't we gone to the high schools to connect at earlier ages to get them interested in the environment in our workplace so they have an interest? I'm seeing and hearing about organizations doing that.
I love that perspective because I always think like I never want it to be performative. I don't want it to be like a thing, but like how do you get away from that? And I love the idea of, recruiting young, like changing your recruiting strategies, changing.
For sure. How are you tapping into your networks? How are you tapping into maybe professional associations? ATD, hello.
ATD.
What are some others? Are we considering places that offer certificates and certifications and not just limiting where we search to specific colleges and universities? So how are we being creative in our approach to talent? How are we being creative in terms of the steps we take to maybe conduct state interviews or receive feedback from current employees and then work to be adaptable so we can make changes before it gets to the point of people resigning or having poor leaders that drive people out the door?
Right.
We talked a lot about expected change already, but I don't think we really talked too much about the unexpected change. Is there anything more you want to say about unexpected change, Esther?
Sure. So I've mentioned change management a few times. And one thing when I have time that I like to cover in my adaptability presentations is the difference between adaptability and change management.
Yes, this is huge.
Because they are not interchangeable.
No.
When we talk about adaptability, which we probably should have started with the definition at the beginning of
we
this
should
talk,
have.
but we can close it out with the definitions. So we've danced all around adaptability.
We have. We're going on a journey.
What it looks like in action. We're being collaborative. We're critical thinkers. We're being strategic. We're problem solvers. We're creative and innovative. We are self-aware. All of that speaks to adaptability in terms of skills and the examples. What is it? We define adaptability as the ability to respond to new conditions or unexpected change. When we think about change management, that goes back to something Clifton mentioned earlier. When we know the change is coming and there's going to be communication, there's going to be maybe some assessment of those impacted by the change that's coming, to find out some factors such as what might be the potential resistance to the change that's coming. How ready are the folks who will be impacted? How ready are they for the change that's coming? What are some ways to combat the potential resistance we anticipate? What are some resources that will set them up for success? What are the communications, Sarah, that you talked about that we need to do in advance so they feel like they are involved?
And then is there follow-up?
Is there a follow-up? Yes.
See if people thought they were successful.
So when we don't know the change is coming and it caught us off guard, it was a surprise. We didn't know it was coming. COVID. That was adaptability.
That's a great example.
We had to respond to it unexpectedly. Artificial intelligence, we may say, is an example, could be an example of change management. We saw technology advancing and changes happening, and we started responding to it. Let's say an organization decides we're going to pull in more use of artificial intelligence, and have AI become a part of how we service our clients or how we provide this product to our customer. Well, now we're talking about change management because we're being intentional. We know the change is coming, and now we want to go through change management steps. Now, what we did need to do as a result of COVID. I mentioned COVID was an example of adaptability. Well, as a result of that, when we went through the shutdown, there are things that organizations had to do, like maybe in many instances provide equipment, the materials for people to do their work differently, to work from home, to be able to connect with one another virtually. And then we had to come up with what steps would be taken so that we have work from home policies, we have regulations and things in place, and how you use the equipment. That was change management. So as a result of that adaptability with COVID, we implemented some change management.
I love how you're bringing those together. We can have both at the same time. They don't have to be in silos.
Right. So when it's unexpected, you didn't see it coming, and you're adapting, that's adaptability. You're responding to that change you didn't see coming. When you know the change is coming, whether it's you implementing it or not, when you know it's coming and you are trying to manage it, that's change management.
Yeah. Tom Earhart. Well, I want to say his name because he was the CEO at Guardian Alarm when we went through the pandemic. Completely had us covered. We were completely prepared. And I'm not going to say some of us thought he was a little off. He started preparing us in January. When nobody was talking, only NBC Nightly News was talking about it.
That's a great point, Clifton, because I bought a lot of toilet paper in January and people thought I was crazy. And I think I bought like probably 4 things of Sam's Club toilet paper. And in March, when it was not on the shelves anymore, you know who was coming to my house for toilet paper?
That's right. That's right. Now, Sarah,
so maybe we have to be adaptable, but we can watch the news.
Sarah, Sarah, we're twins, so I had it anyway because I buy 3 things of toilet paper from Sam's all the time. But you're right. Going in the stores, there was nothing there, but Tom had us so prepared. And I remember taking my MBA classes that fall and heard nightmare stories from some of our biggest, largest companies. Our first assignment was tell us how your company got you through the pandemic.
Wow.
Nightmare stories, Esther. Large companies with billions of dollars. Nightmare stories. They were not prepared. So I always give a shout out to him. He's somewhere out there in the universe now. But
love that.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. So I know I mentioned earlier that I'm obsessed with AI, and I am. But leaders seem to be obsessed with Gen Z.
When you say obsessed with Gen Z, tell me more.
Esther, whenever we talk about generational stuff, everybody goes right to Gen Z. What are they thinking? What are they like? Why are they like this? Why aren't they professional? Why don't they dress this way? It's like it's an obsession with every class that I talk to with leaders, and we start talking generations. Gen Z, everyone goes right to Gen Z. Nobody understands them. Nobody gets along with them. They're weird. They're childish. All these things. And so with generations in general, and I talk about this all the time, but I do want to get your take on this with generations, and it being so many different generations in the workplace now, at least 5. Still some folks hanging around had to come back after the pandemic. So some folks who have retired, but some folks still hanging around from generations far away. How are we going to get them to work together? Because I'm telling you, it's like maybe they just get in class with me and they feel like it's time to just let their feelings be known, but it's kind of hostile. How we gonna work this out?
That's a perfect question near the end of what we're doing here for this podcast, because your question, the answer, in my opinion, is a wonderful blend that takes us to adaptability, DEI, and emotional intelligence. Ooh. And here's why I say that. if we go back to Daniel Goleman's EQ model, there are 4 quadrants in essence that are in this model. You have the self-awareness quadrant, which recognizes, hey, do I know myself well enough to know what makes me happy? Do I know when I'm in a good mood? Do I know what triggers me and switches me to a bad mood? Do I know what, I like to eat when that's going to put me in my happy place? Okay. So it's self-awareness. Do I know why Clifton, when he walks in the room, oh my goodness, do I know why I feel a certain way about millennials? Do I know why baby boomers are like my go-to, my best? Self-awareness. Self-awareness. So let's leave self-awareness. Now, social awareness. Social awareness. Am I able to appreciate diversity? Am I able to connect with folks? Am I empathetic? Am I able to recognize differences and see opportunities with those differences? That's social awareness. Then we have relational awareness. Relational awareness is, am I able to demonstrate persuasion, influence skills, building relationships that are healthy, and engaging and interacting and collaborating with people in a healthy way? That's the relational awareness quadrant. And then we have the self-control quadrant that I talked about earlier, where we talk about back in that self-awareness quadrant, when I go to a different mood because somebody has triggered me or I'm in my happy place and can I pull back? Somebody set me off. They said the wrong thing. I hate when they do that. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's the hardest one.
The self-control quadrant. Can I nip it in the bud? Can I pull back? Like Drew Barrymore and Firestarter. I like that version. Okay. But back on.
Got to eat a couple peanut M&Ms before these meetings.
So that's the adaptability in that particular quadrant. And so going back to what you were talking about, Clifton, the adaptability, when we think in terms of those skills, am I seeking to be curious about the other generations? Am I looking to learn how we connect, how we are the same, me being a Gen Xer, if I need to connect with a traditionalist or a baby boomer or a Gen Z, or if my leader is Gen Z and I'm a Gen Xer, do I recognize some steps I need to take so that we have a better relationship? Because I'm noticing some friction, or I notice, man, we vibe so well, we click so well. And maybe what steps can I take if I recognize that I have a peer that doesn't click so well with my leader? What am I doing to help them? Rather than everybody for themselves. I got my own going. I'm good to go. You need to figure it out. That's also a failed opportunity with adaptability. What are we doing to promote that culture, whether you have leadership authority or not? And my leadership role, what I'm doing, what am I doing to not only help build up my direct reports, but also with my peers, because I still play a part in that environment. And then when we take that to the aspect of maybe advocating for other generations.
I was just thinking that, I think to me, a good leader is a leader who sees, a boomer struggling with AI and pulls him aside and says, hey, I know some really cool ways to make your job easier. Can I work with you? Can we do something together? Or gets curious and asks the question like, hey, I notice you're resistant to AI. Is there a reason why? Is there something I can do to support you? I think, that curious piece is so huge, and it's what makes leaders good.
Curious and being open.
Yeah.
Because you just spoke from a younger generational perspective. So from an older generational perspective, I got to think that the struggle has to be, what is it I feel like I should adapt to, and what is it I feel like is wrong and needs to change?
And that goes to taking time, Clifton, to ask questions, to be curious about the person and develop that relationship, because you need to help a person feel safe with you in order to get to the point where they even want to give you answers to those questions.
That's the whole strategy, because again, and I'm not going to name the generation, some generations feel like it should be done this way and that's that. And to some points, Esther, they're right. So they're right. But I just go back to what we all thought about working from home before we were forced to. People were saying, no, it's not going to work. And then when we were forced to, we found that people worked better at home.
So it depends on the person.
Depends on the person, for sure.
Definitely depends
About
on the
looking
person.
at that.
And something else I want to caution us with, you know, and I even have to remind myself at times, we want to be mindful of when we are stating something as a characteristic of a person versus a characteristic that is not necessarily a characteristic of a whole generation, but a stereotype.
Love that.
So we want to
Great
think in those terms too. There are some things that may be characteristic of a good number of folks, but is it fair to say, oh, all millennials are, or all Gen Z is, you know, so that
I made fun of my avocado toast for forever.
that again reinforces the need for us to be curious about the individual before we go and put a label on them.
Yeah.
Or say, oh, you're just one of those millennials, just one of those Gen Z, know how you all are.
Yeah.
Oh, and now we got to get ready for Alpha. Alpha coming behind them.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so where have I missed it? You know, am I depending on AI to tell me how to be a human being rather than taking time to get to know the person so that I don't just put the Gen Z label on them rather than getting to know who they are as a person who is a certain age and they fall within a particular generation. And that's also a missed opportunity with some organizations where they have all of these generations together. How are you being intentional maybe about cross-generational or peer mentoring? And you can match them up together where you have that knowledge, that expertise, some skills that older generations may have. And how can you connect that with every millennial, every Gen Zer may not be tech savvy. We can't make that assumption, but where can you maybe match up some strong skill sets so that there is learning taking place on both sides, whether it's mentoring, whether it's coaching, whether it's, you know, using the cross-generational engagement and collaboration to develop relationships where people feel more connection and you have that better sense of belonging that just happens to, oh, that's going to help us out where we have more creativity, we have greater use and impact from the diversity because people are enjoying the connections and the relationships that they're making and are able to problem solve more often with more ideas being generated. So many benefits that some organizations are not tapping into for maybe some reasons that maybe AI can help us with.
I was just going to say,
there are some ways to
AI
peer
can
mentoring.
really transform leadership, I think, is another thing that people don't always think about. You can put a whole email thread in there and say, you know, where did I go right? Where did I go wrong as a leader? Like, how can I improve? I think there's a lot of cool things you can do, like to work on your leadership hand in hand.
And something like that, we'd want to consider what are some ways maybe we want to think about if there's need for us to use a platform where we can program aspects of our organizational culture in this so that it is
some of
actually tapped into the skills we promote in our organization and what's prioritized, whether it's the skill mapping, whether it's these are the ideal leadership competencies that we promote. Can you help me to ensure that this communication meets the competencies that are prioritized in my organization?
One thing I'm so
AI that can be programmed to that extent. And the general AI, the one that's open access and open to the public, may not be as granular, may not speak to what's going to represent the tone that is indicative of our company culture. So that's something to think about too.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Esther. I always love hearing from you. I just really appreciate all your wisdom and everything you've done for ATD over the years.
This is great. And I love talking about this. And I just must say that it's funny. I don't know if Clifton told you, Sarah, but I remember when I was serving on the ATD Detroit board and Clifton was asking me, about being a member of ATD. And to see now that Clifton is president-elect for the chapter. Clifton, you've done some things. And the way you all are leading the chapter and the things you all are doing since COVID, hats off to you. I certainly applaud you for the work you do and for the efforts you put towards trying to ensure that, of course, going back to ATD's mission or the vision rather of creating a world that works better. What you do locally for ATD Detroit and for the membership and for the guests and potential members is awesome and great, because you do it as volunteers with a passion, and that means so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So as we wrap things up, I need some advice, some practical advice. How should we move forward in these times of uncertainty? What can we do now?
First and foremost, I highly encourage doing some self-reflection.
Yes.
At minimum, taking a look at, there's one exercise, and you all may have done it in a presentation or something, where they have you identify who are the top maybe 5 to 10 people that are in your network that you engage with the most. And are they male, female, another gender identity, what culture or ethnicity, and look to see if you see similarities and how you can branch out in terms of your immediate network. So something to think about. But the self-awareness, I would say to take a look at how often you engage in self-development, how often you show an interest in other people. Those are a couple of things right there. If you had to come up with maybe 3 words people would have to say about you without you knowing, what are 3 words that come to mind? Do any of those words represent some of the skills we talked about with adaptability?
I always think of that from my perspective, but not someone else's.
Right.
Someone else's
Maybe after this, we should text each other what the 3 words are.
and so what can you be intentional about moving forward, at least on a weekly basis, when it comes to skill development in those areas of adaptability we called out? Being curious, developing a relationship with somebody you don't regularly talk to. Showing one of the Dale Carnegie golden principles is become sincerely interested in people. Love that.
I love that.
Dale Carnegie is the author of How to Win Friends and Influence.
Okay, I have an aside for you. I have a 9-year-old who I've told to read this book, and he is loving it.
What?
He is loving it. He's just a curious kid, and he just is like eating it up. We moved 2 years ago, and he was struggling finding friends, and he was like, "Mom, I don't know what to do." And I was like, "I have this book. It's kind of for grown-ups, but I really like it. I think you should read it." And he was like, "Okay."
Do you talk to him about what he's getting from the book? That is awesome.
We read it together. It's really cool.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I find that 2 key things I go to the most are the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Covey, and then the 50 Golden Principles by Dale Carnegie. It's like clockwork. I don't care what topic I'm teaching or facilitating, there's always a way for me to connect one of the 7 habits or one or more of the Dale Carnegie Golden Principles.
Love that.
Wow.
You give me enough time, I would connect them to adaptability as well.
Right.
Yes.
I
Good.
mean,
but
I
those
got a whole new bookshelf now talking to you. I've been writing them all down.
Yeah, they'll be in the notes too.
The self-awareness, taking a look at how you come across to others and being curious and interested in other people, and then being intentional about steps you can take when it comes to your adaptability skills.
Yeah.
Whether it's helping somebody just thought partner with solving a problem, whether it's, you know what, let me be a little more strategic in this thing that I was trying to do.
Yeah.
Or even taking a look at how you can be more collaborative when it comes to some circumstances or some work that you have. You know, just little ways to take baby steps. We're not saying try to, go at everything like a water hose coming at you, because you probably won't do anything. But how can you maybe be intentional about very minor, smart goals that don't come across as overwhelming for you? The self-awareness, the curiosity with other people, and intentionality with at least one skill related to adaptability.
Speaking of those skills, can you leave our listeners with one thing that they could do this week, whatever week they're listening to strengthen their adaptability muscle?
Absolutely. One thing I would say, let's take it back to the AQAI model. And what I emphasize about that learning agility, the learning agility. So one thing I would say is, what is one thing that you do regularly, almost routinely, that you might want to consider, I've been doing this a lot and it's routine, and this is something I could probably just have AI do. So what is it that you can take that you haven't been doing before with AI and have AI do it?
I love that. And I think if we did that regularly, even, monthly, that could be life-changing.
For sure. For sure. And then those who are already regular AI users, and that's my go-to. That's my sweet spot. Like Mr. Clifton here, I would say, what is one example, or who might be one example of a person, I haven't been intentional about connecting with somebody new, somebody maybe that I've seen a few times. Be intentional about connecting with somebody maybe that you don't regularly engage with. And just initiate a conversation to learn about their background. And in particular, I would like to emphasize, try to make it somebody who doesn't look like you.
I love that. Love that. I think a lot of people make fun of like the first 5 minutes of a meeting, but I think that's sometimes the most valuable 5 minutes of a meeting, when you get to know someone and get that relationship going.
Well, since you said it, Sarah, prompt example. What are some examples of an icebreaker question people can answer in about 3 minutes that would be inclusive and help to get to know others? AI will probably give you, tell AI you would like 20 examples, so you have enough to choose from.
Nice.
I like giving AI a metric. Here's the goal.
Right, I know.
I like being specific. Otherwise, AI will give you one example. It's like,
oh my God, I know.
Like, you didn't ask me for multiple. You just asked me for a or a way. You didn't make it plural. So, and you know what? You know what AI is doing? AI is helping us to adapt.
It is.
So we're moving from a low AQ to high AQ, high adaptability quotient. And the more we use it, the more we're adapting, because AI is evolving, and we can't help but to evolve if we continue to use it. So that's a good thing right there.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. I appreciate the opportunity and the lively discussion and the engaging thoughts and questions from you all. I could go on all night, but we don't have that kind of time.
Right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Esther.
You are so welcome.